Hello, I'm Andy, and I'm at Six Flags America here in Bowie, Maryland, just outside Washington, D.C. We're here to ride a train in a theme park that are both about to close a week from the day of filming. So today we're going to hop on board the train that's behind me, the Capital Railways, to see what it's like before it's gone. So join me, ride with me, and let's begin this journey. Six Flags America is, or was, depending on when you watch this video, and will likely be was given that the park is closing on the day that this video is being released, located about 7 miles outside Washington, D.C., with 131 acres of land. And in the middle of the park is where you can, or could, find the Capital Railways, a narrow-gauge railroad looping around the park, and the reason for us visiting. Now today I'm also being joined by Grace.
Why, hello!
Who will be joining me on our trip around the park and on the train. When's the last? Yeah, we'll see how exciting it actually is. But before we ride the Capital Railways, let's learn about how this railroad came to be. And to do that, we'll need to dive a little bit into the history of the Six Flags America theme park. The park originally opened in 1974, not as a Six Flags amusement park, but as a wildlife center initially founded by 2 animal trainers, and funded, oddly enough, by Texas billionaire and presidential candidate Ross Perot. Before opening, it would actually be taken over by ABC's Scenic and Wildlife Attractions division, which used to run a fair number of theme parks, and would open in 1974 as a 280-acre, 500-animal drive-through wildlife park called the Wildlife Preserve. The Wildlife Preserve, even with its drive-through safari, did not attract enough customers, and in 1976, only 2 years after opening, began to sell off its animals to other zoos and parks. The park would pass hands a couple of times before being sold in 1980 to area businessmen, who transformed it into Wild World, a park that would keep the drive-through safari, but add more traditional theme park rides, water park elements, and even a mascot, Wilbur the Walrus, although he was not officially added until 1988. But, most importantly for this video, Wild World would include a new train. The park opened in 1982 with various rides, and although the drive-through safari was initially kept, it would quickly be replaced with the Wild World Railroad, a narrow-gauge railroad described as a, quote, antique steam train, where you could, quote, come eye to eye with exotic animals from all corners of the earth. The train departed from a station in the middle of the park, the same station where we would board on our visit, and headed through the animal areas to the only other station at the Safari Village, where there were crafts, a petting zoo, and even elephant rides. The train would then continue in that loop back to the main station. This layout has remained essentially the same up until today. 2 narrow-gauge steam locomotives operated on the railroad, the Melodia B and the Vulcan. Both were actually historic steam locomotives. The Melodia B was built in 1897 to haul sugarcane in Louisiana. After decades serving as an industrial locomotive, it found new life at the Carowinds theme park in South Carolina in the 1970s, and of course made its way to Wild World in the 1980s. The Vulcan was built in 1927 by the Vulcan Iron Works for the Lehigh Stone Company in Lehigh, Illinois, ultimately finding its new life at Cedar Point Amusement Park in Sandusky, Ohio, before also winding up at Wild World. Both steam locomotives unfortunately wouldn't last too long, only making it to 1984, when they both were transferred to private hands, where they have remained ever since. Diesel locomotives would now make the loop, and unfortunately I could not find much information on these replacement locomotives. The Wild World Park and train chugged along for about a decade until maintenance issues, financial issues, and ride closures led to the sale of the park in 1992, when it was purchased by Premier Parks. The park would now be called Adventure World. Wilbur the Walrus would be fired to be replaced by Baltimore Orioles Cal Ripken Jr. as the official park spokesperson. More coasters were added, while the live animal element was pushed aside, although this shift away from live animals had already been unfolding in the last years of Wild World. The train, however, was left relatively untouched, although now it no longer served as a way to view, quote, exotic animals, but more for picnic customers. The Safari Village stop instead now served a picnic pavilion, where large groups could sit down to eat lunch or just regroup. Although unclear, it seems that the train at this time was now only to be used by those using this picnic pavilion. In 1996, Adventure World would actually get a steam train once again. Well, sort of. The park acquired the 004T Porter locomotive Beatrice, built in 1910 to also serve Louisiana sugarcane fields, just like the Melodia B. Abandoned in the 1950s, Beatrice would end up at various theme parks before finding its way to Adventure World in 1996. However, by the time Beatrice made it to Adventure World, it was now secretly dieselized, with its power coming from a hidden diesel engine in the steam engine's tender. In 1998, Premier Parks acquired Six Flags, and in 1999 rebranded Adventure World as Six Flags America, making Bugs Bunny the new mascot. The train remained about the same, now being called the Oak Grove Express, as its destination was still the Oak Grove Picnic Pavilions. And in 2009, the train would be made open for all guests, not just those using the picnic pavilion, although that stop would be kept open. It was at this time that the train was officially branded the Capital Railways. Beatrice would continue to be used into the 2010s, but would eventually be retired, replaced with two diesel locomotives that had already been operating alongside Beatrice for some time. The two diesel locomotives were Whitney, a green diesel locomotive, and Oscar, a red diesel locomotive, built in 1948 and 1950 respectively for industrial uses. Beatrice would sit on the siding for years, slowly decaying until being sold in 2017 to the Kirby family farm in Florida, where it still operates today. Whitney, the green diesel locomotive, would then become the main locomotive for the Capital Railways, and would be the locomotive that would pull us along on our trip to Six Flags America. And that brings us to today, with Six Flags America about to close on November 2nd, and will likely have already closed by the time you're watching this video. With the reason for closing? Well, according to Six Flags CEO Richard A. Zimmerman, Six Flags America was simply, quote, not a strategic fit with the company's long-term growth plan. And there you have it, the long and winding history of the Capital Railways, heavily interwoven with the history of Six Flags America. And with the clock ticking, I think it's time we get on with the actual train ride. We boarded at the main station, dating back to the days of Wild World. A week before the park's closing date, the line for the train was actually quite long. But before we knew it, the train was pulling into the station. And after folks got off the train, we were allowed to board the Capital Railways. We've boarded the train. Is that right, Grace? We're here. After a safety briefing and short introduction to the park were made over the train's loudspeakers, our train began to move, starting our 0.8-mile journey around Six Flags America. We soon came to a siding where we could see extra passenger cars in storage, as well as the red diesel locomotive Oscar, which looked frankly to be in terrible shape. It was on this siding that until 2017, Beatrice, the dieselized steam engine, was stored and suffering a similar fate to Oscar. Following the siding, the train becomes surrounded by wilderness, and it's easy to forget that we were within a Six Flags theme park. It's crazy to imagine that at one point among these trees, one could have seen everything from ostriches to zebras to giraffes to camels and buffalo back in the Wild World days. Soon we were approaching the Oak Grove Picnic Pavilions, the private group event space that replaced the Safari Village. Several folks got off at the station here, which, like the main station, appeared unchanged from its days as a Safari Village station. It was clear that even a week before closing, the Oak Grove Picnic Pavilions were still being widely used. Leaving the Picnic Pavilion station, I noticed a trackside water tower, water storage devices used for steam engines, and wondered if this was used in the relatively few years actual steam locomotives were used on these tracks. The water tower does appear on the Wild World theme park map. Nevertheless, we were soon out of the wilderness and back among the theme park rides, including this smaller train ride. And then, only about 15 minutes after leaving the main station, we were arriving back where we started.
Right here. These remain seated to the right until full complete stop. Once it does, make over to your right. Again, please wait till the train comes to a dead complete stop.
We disembarked thinking how crazy it was that all of this would soon be shut down. But happy we got to ride this little loop of a train. All right, so we just wrapped up our train ride here on the Capitol Railways at Six Flags America. We also went on a few other rides here as well. We had a lot of fun for our first and I guess our last time at this theme park. Who knows what's really going to happen to the train and to all the theme park rides, but again, we had a lot of fun. So I guess then, until the next time, I'm Andy on Track, and I'll see you on a train. When's the last time you went to a theme park?
10 years ago.
Oh, God.